All right, good afternoon. This is Jennifer Wilkinson. I'm the Director of Alternative Education here at the State Department. And I have this short PowerPoint, and then I'm going to pull up several different Word documents so that we can get more familiar with the documents you'll need to have filled out before we come to visit, and then the documents that you'll fill out after we come to visit. But I want you guys to be familiar with those and just ask any questions as we go along. As Gary has said, he will give a link, and I'll post this on the Alternative Education Programs website when I learn how to do that here in a week or so. And I'll also post the PowerPoint. If you want the PowerPoint sooner than that, you can email me and I will send it to you. All right, so let's get started. And I do have Missy Korn here. She is our new Alternative Education Specialist. So if you have any questions, just let us know in that little chat box. Here we go. Okay. So this will be the first in our series. Working with Cabinet over the last few months, we really want to move the Alternative Education Office from more of an evaluator and evaluation and a compliance office to more of a support and resource and professional development office. And so we have developed a series, and this is our first in the series. As you can see, October we'll have chronic absenteeism. November we'll go over the early warning indicator system and the My Data system. They rolled out about 5-6 years ago, and I don't think we've really had a discussion about them in the last 2 or 3, but they are still available and a good use of data that we already have established. So we'll go over those in November. January, we'll talk about some trauma-informed practices that could be good for the alternative education setting, as well as restorative justice approaches in February, child abuse, when you should push for more information, when you shouldn't, what the forms you need to have, those kinds of things in March, and then risk and protective factors and the OPNA in April. So these are topics that have been requested by alt ed people, so we hope if you have any ideas, please send me an email and we will see about getting more information out. All right, so alternative education is simply a way to reduce dropouts while increasing high school graduates. And of the 11,412 students that were served in the 280 alt ed programs last year, that got a graduation rate of about 93%. So we know that we've been cut drastically in our funds and are serving less students, but of those students that are being served, you guys are really knocking it out of the park. The Oklahoma Alternative Education Program is the state's primary dropout prevention and intervention strategy. It is the only one that is funded by the state. We know that individual districts fund different programs and have different strategies that they utilize, but this is the state-funded program. The law went into effect in 1995. And it simply says that it's an alternative education process that incorporates appropriate structure, curriculum, interaction, reinforcement to help better serve those students that aren't being successful in the traditional setting. You always have to get the law out of the way, and then it recognizes that each individual school district gets to define their alt ed student and then design appropriate programs to fit those needs. So that might mean that you have more than one alt ed program in your district. And your programs should all look different than the traditional school. If that strategy worked, they would all be in the traditional school. So when we walk in and we're observing, we shouldn't walk into a traditional English classroom and then walk into an English classroom in the alt ed and see the same curriculum delivered the same way with the same assignments. First time didn't work, let's try something new. And here are just the statutes and regulations. Title 70 started out as a high challenge children and youth. This was part of a juvenile justice overhaul law back in the early 90s, and that has now become the alternative education law. Rolled out competitive grants in '89 and then have slowly increased the number of programs until 2003. And in 2003, all districts were required to have some kind of alt ed program. So again, as I said, we have 280 programs that serve 11,412 students for 515 school districts last year. You guys are currently getting in and establishing and getting in those stragglers because the plan was due on September 15th, and Missy and I are here to help if you are still one of those that still needs to get your plan certified. Just some housekeeping. If you are going to serve less than 10 students in a school year, you need to have a statutory waiver turned into the accreditation office. And if you are going to go less than 4 hours and 12 minutes, 5 days a week, or you're going to choose to go 756 hours in a 180 school calendar, if you're going to go less than either one of those, you have to have permission to do that. And that permission is granted by the state board, and that is a deregulation application that again goes through the accreditation office. They want those statutory waivers and deregulation applications turned into their office by October 1. So that is just right around the corner if you need to do either one of those. Again, each district gets to define their at-risk population and then design programs to meet the needs of those at-risk learners. So there is a great deal of local control in what that looks like, and 280 programs will look slightly to vastly different depending on region, type of program. It is allowing you to provide flexibility to meet community and student needs. So that's full day, half day, evening programs. It's a combination or hybrid of those, as well as service learning, work study, virtual. Plus we have about 12, not quite 12, career tech programs that also serve district needs. The 17 criteria were established. These are above and beyond criteria. So your alt ed students will receive every opportunity that a traditional student has, plus these 17 things done to better support those students. So there needs to be an intake and screening process. Your program needs to have clear and measurable goals and objectives. You have to have counseling and social service components. Each student has to have an individualized graduation plan. And with ICAP rolling out in its pilot year this school year with an increase over the next 4 years, we know that all students in the state of Oklahoma will have an individualized graduation plan. You have to turn in your proposed annual budget to my office. Those can be faxed or emailed. And you have to have an evaluation component as part of the process. You have to have a low student-to-teacher ratio, strategies for effective instruction. All programs must have appropriately certified teachers. We know that some have the assistance of aides in there, but every program has to have a certified teacher. When No Child Left Behind went away and ESSA took its place, highly qualified was not a component that stayed in ESSA, so we were able to revert back to state law that says they just have to have a certification It doesn't matter what that certification is. So if you're an alt-ed in a high school setting, you could still be an elementary certified person because that is the person you feel best works with your at-risk population, but they still must be certified. And every teacher attached to an alt-ed program gets paid 5% of base of time spent in alt-ed, just like your special education teachers. You have to have faculty experience with at-risk youth, and you have to have individualized instruction. Your curriculum needs and graduation standards need to meet state graduation requirements and provide remediation as well as acceleration, because we know that our lower learners as well as our higher learners both can be at risk for one reason or another, so we need to be able to meet those needs. You have to have life skills instruction and art education. You have to have collaboration with youth-serving agencies and businesses. You must have a plan in place to serve your 6th through 12th grade students. And these students should be, for the most part, outside of the special education eligibility. When we go in, your special education population will be discussed. And if you have 15 spots and 11 of those spots have an IEP, it raises flags that you're simply an extension of the special education program or that your special education program is not working. And so these students are needing further, and so it's just a conversation you need to have. Your special ed population in your alt-ed should match the percentage of special education in your district. So we know that sometimes alternative education works better for special education. We don't want it to be a dumping ground for them. We don't want it to be a dumping ground for anybody, but we don't want it to be an extension. And then lastly, opportunities for student participation in vocational programs and extracurricular activities such as graduation, band, athletics, clubs, organizations. So if your alt-ed program does not provide those, then they still have the opportunity to go back to the traditional school. That does not mean they automatically get on the team. That does not mean they don't have to meet your qualifications. They still need to try out, they still need to be accepted, they still have to be passing, behaving, attending, those kinds of things. But they do get to walk at graduation if they meet your policy. They do get to play in sports and band if they meet your policy. I have a question. Is the certification question clarified in writing that can be presented to our district? That is a yes. It is in the state alternative education law. If you email me, I can send you that law. So it is in writing, it is in law. Some reporting requirements. By July 1 in law, it says that each individual program or whoever the LEA is for a co-op needs to provide my office with a detailed expenditure report showing how you spent your alt-ed dollars. That's Project Code 388, typically in Fund 12. Sometimes I'll even get some Fund 11 as well as a Fund 12 report, simply because I know I don't pay you enough to fulfill all of your financial obligations, and so some have to come out of general as well as your Fund 12. In September, on the 15th, you have to go on to single sign-on and have your plan certified. And then you're faxing in either a proposed budget or your sending schools are sending in an authorization to pay form. I have another question. It says, can a high school tell a student that their placement is at alt-ed and then require an alt-ed program to take them? The answer is no. Alt-ed programs across the state of Oklahoma are not to be punitive in nature. They are not a dumping ground. They are not a placement program. It is a partnership between the school district, the student, and the parent guardian, which needs to be clearly defined in your intake and screening process. And then you should really hold everybody accountable to that. That way you don't have anybody maneuvering and adjusting the process. The National Alternative Education Association has an upcoming conference in Dallas in March. If you guys have some extra funds sitting around and you want to learn more, we are currently in the process of working on rebooting our Oklahoma Alternative Education Association. So if you're interested in that, give me an email and I will get you in touch with the group of alt-ed teachers across the state that are trying to do that reboot. Plus, the NAEA website has several different resources available to you. While we have the 17 criteria, as we were one of the first states in the nation to roll out alt-ed in the early 90s, groundbreaking, very controversial, but very helpful. And the way that we have established our 17 and the fact that we aren't a punitive program shows our success in our 93% graduation rate. Other states that have made it punitive or have lowered standards are not seeing success. States like Florida, Texas, Mississippi, their programs are punitive and they don't have the success because those kids still feel the barriers. They still have the defenses up, where ours should be more of a partnership and a choice. And NAEA even has some supports for that, and they have best strategies to kind of help clarify some of that. Here is my contact information. I obviously did not save Missy's contact information on this slide, even though I thought I did. But her email is missy.corn, missy.corn @sde.ok.gov, and her number is, give me my phone and I'll get you her phone number. It's area code 405-831. What are the last few? 1242. I'll say it again, 405-831. 1242 is her phone number. She will be a field employee for the State Department, and she'll be on the road seeing most of you guys. And so you can contact either one of us at any time. Okay, and that's the last slide. So how do I bring up? You said go to share. My screen. Monitor to.
Just a minute. There you go.
Okay. So
and when you need the next one, or if you want to start with one of them, just
click out of that.
Yeah.
And then I think, let's see. That's it. Okay. So this will be the evaluation rubric. In years past, the Oklahoma Technical Assistance Center, or OTAC, came out, did an evaluation, and they had a rubric. The State Department of Education has, again, not renewed that contract, and we will be doing this internally. We have made some changes to the rubric itself, and then the way that we are going to use the rubric. In years past, OTAC filled out the rubric, and it was simply what you got was how they filled it out. This time we want it to be more of a partnership. So we have provided you with the rubric, and these documents will also be uploaded to the website. And then they were in the folder if you were able to attend one of the regional meetings. We will have copies when we come to see you if for one reason or another you aren't able to access them. But we would prefer to have this filled out by whomever is in charge of your alt-ed, and then have evidence gathered to prove where you placed yourself. And because self-evaluation is one of the 17 components, we feel this is a good way to kind of help you build those goals and objectives, as well as self-evaluating if you're meeting the needs of your students, if you have to adapt or expand to better support your students. And so we'll go through this. This is page 1. You'll just have basic information put up here. The point system will be added by Missy or I when it pops up and goes away, and I missed it. But I think he asked where the documents were. These documents will be put on the Alternative Education Programs website page. Or if you email me, I can send them to you probably faster than I will get them uploaded. I'm not exactly technically with it, so technologically with it, but so it takes me a while. We have added a point system. Got it, thanks, okay. To kind of help better gauge, non-compliant means that you are not meeting the components of the law. Minimally compliant means that you are meeting the law, but you're not proving to be effective for your students. Effective means your students are being successful as well as meeting the law. Highly effective means that you have done the bare minimum plus gotten your kids effective, but you're really knocking it out of the park. And so most of you will fall in the effective range, which is absolutely awesome. And then some of you will be in the highly effective range, and we will work with those in the bottom 2 ranges to get you in the effective range. So these first few, you've either met them or you haven't. All classes are conducted by a certified teacher. Again, certification subject does not matter. They simply must be certified. All courses meet the state standards. Just as a side note, if you are utilizing an online curriculum, you need to make sure that they're meeting the Oklahoma academic standards. Some do, and we have found that some do not, especially when we moved from Common Core to our own Oklahoma academic standards. You have clear and measurable goals and objectives. Some of you will call that vision or mission or something like that. Effective student-to-teacher ratio. In the law, it says that it's a low student-to-teacher ratio conducive to at-risk learning. In years past, that has been approximately for every teacher, 15 students. I would always engage in discussion with OTAC that if I had 18 kids that needed second semester of English 4 to graduate, that teacher was going to have 18 kids. So know that you've got a little bit of leeway and workable room there, but not very much. There's a reason why we've stuck to the 1 to 15 because it really does. But on the flip side, you may have 8 very rowdy boys that feel like 100 students, and so you'll want to lower that. So just kind of make sure that it's working and effective for everyone in that low student-to-teacher ratio. So good rule of thumb is 1 to 15. You're either going to have turned in your budget or you're not. And student participation. We get a lot of phone calls about sports and bands, but especially graduation in May. So make sure that your students are very clear about what the policy is. If they, can walk with just 1 class missing and they're halfway through it, or if they've got 2 and they won't be able to. So make sure that we're really communicating because that becomes a very big deal towards the end. Any questions about page 1? All right, I got no pop-ups. All right, page 2 is appropriate program design to serve at-risk students. And again, non-compliant, minimally compliant, effective, highly effective. So you're really aiming for this one right here, which simply says that you have defined your most at-risk students and designed appropriate programs, and that you have very clear intake and screening and expectations. So if you've got a virtual program, if you have in-school suspension, again, which should not be lumped under your alt-ed, but sometimes the alt-ed teacher wears multiple hats. Those are 3 very different programs. Only one of them is an alt-ed program because they're doing these 17 things. ISS, out-of-school suspension, is not because it's punitive in nature. Virtual only gets lumped in there if you're providing all 17 components, and typically in virtual programs out in the state, they're not getting the counseling and the life skills and the arts incorporated. So just make sure we have very clear pathways, even if because of financial shortages, people are wearing multiple hats. Your program is serving an appropriate number of students, about 1 to 15. The duration and time, if you have, if you're only going to go 3 hours and you get special permission, those kids still need to be able to, in that 3 hours, make up coursework as well as accelerate coursework. So make sure that they've got enough time and your setup is serving those students' needs, and that you've provided differentiated services to be able to meet all students' needs individually and effectively. All right, any questions? All right, moving on. Again, faculty selection. Faculty needs to be certified. Can't emphasize that enough. It comes up every year. It's cheaper to put that aid in there, but it's a huge liability that you're taking. And it's in the law very clearly. So just remember they have to be certified, but then you're looking for that person that just works fantastically with your more challenged, your more at-risk population. And so sometimes someone that's willing can learn content and core subject, but we can't always have the patience and ability and strategies in our toolbox to be able to work with students that really know how to push our buttons sometimes. All right, intake and screening population. You have clearly defined targeted population. That is at significant risk of dropping out. You have both traditional and alternative education educators in that screening process. So their traditional school and the alternative program are really working together to make that transition for that student as smooth as possible. And that everybody understands what that process is so that we don't have anybody skipping some steps. And you may go ahead and put some goals and responsibilities. If you have that chronic absentee student, maybe before they come to you, they have to reduce their absences by 1 in a week, or may have them show that they really are willing to make this move and make the changes needed. That is perfectly acceptable. If it's a behavior or a attendance, you can make them show some effort. This is a program of choice and opportunity. It's not a privilege, it's not a right, and a lot of times you guys have a wait list, and if a student has been accepted and then they're not doing what they need to do, then Plan C needs to be developed for them. We shouldn't definitely walk them to the door, but we should have a Plan C available, because we only want to be working with those students that are willing to work, and sometimes that really affects the whole group when you have that one that just can't quite get it together. A review of student records is part of the intake and screening process. You know what that kid is, where they've been, what they've done, what they need before they really ever step foot in your program. Most students voluntarily enroll. We have found that there are a county or two that the judge either has his own alt-ed program that they are funding the majority of, or a judge will place. You really need to make sure this is at a minimum if the judge. You need to be having conversations within your DEA, have a strong partnership with your police force so that these things aren't happening, because those students, if they've really really bucking that system will be a huge distraction in your alt-ed program. Another thing to keep in mind is that some districts automatically place OJA and DHS students in the alt-ed. It's just like they bypass go straight to alt-ed, and that should also be strongly discouraged. Again, not a dumping ground. A lot of OJA and DHS kids work fantastically in the traditional setting, and we want them to have just as much choice about their educational path as any other students. So make sure that that also is not occurring. And students are screened out only when the program is not the best fit. So again, that goes back to your special education. We have special education, but it should not be an extension. It should be their best fit. So I don't want to see districts that are taking kids off IEPs just to stay within the threshold. That's not what's best. There was a reason why that IEP was put in place, and that we should not have an overabundance or a direct path because they are OJA, DHS, special ed. Any questions about intake and screening? Okay, got no pop-ups. If you do have a question and I've moved on, just pop up. I'm trying to pay attention to them. State and local collaboration. These are programs where your students have basic needs that aren't being met, and we definitely need to make sure that clothes and food and hygiene products and those things are, you have pathways and options for those. You have those couch jumpers, you have those homeless students that may need a hotel, and a lot of times the church will pony up to pay for that hotel room. You need to be able to have those go-to people within your district, your community, that will help you provide those basic needs for your students. On the flip side, we need to be getting our students out into the community. There are lots of reasons why they need to be out in the community. They're going to leave you at some point, and they need to be able to function in the community. And on the flip side, the community needs to know that our kids are not bad kids. They're not dumb kids. They're not evil kids. Just for one reason or another, life has handed it to them. Sometimes their fault. Other times, not so much their fault. Sometimes those are just cards they've been dealt. And so the community needs to be very aware that you are not a program that has those kids. You hear that a lot, or you get the facial expressions. And so community coming in as well as them going out into the community. And there's a service learning component that you can provide them if they go out and do X amount of community service hours, and then they follow the syllabus and they research and they do whatever your syllabus says, then you can transcript that service learning grade. Same thing for work study. It's not just the fact that they have a job, but that within the school day, you're also teaching them resume and interviews and handshake and eye contact and dress and those kinds of things. So both of those, while you are allowed within the state board alt-ed rules to give those as credits, you need to have very clearly defined syllabuses and policies in place for those. But those are ways that you get kids out into the community. Other ways to get them out into the community is that they go to the elementary school and read or tutor, or I have a good number of alt-ed programs that will go to a community retirement center and they play dominoes, or they do different art projects like painting pumpkins or Christmas cards or Valentine's Day cards. So there's lots of ways to do the community service and then also have opportunities to strengthen that. I have an alt-ed program that goes and works in the animal shelter, and they do the weekly walks and those kinds of things. Or I even have an alt-ed program that goes to the regional food bank and fills up all of the sacks for the community, but then they also are part of that require. So they're giving back to their community. They're a giver as much as they're a taker. Any questions about that? As much going out as coming in. Okay, no pop-ups there. And sometimes that is a hard thing, especially in very teeny tiny rural districts that don't have a lot of business or community. And so that's when you have to get really creative, but we still need to be doing this. This is much about learning how to be a citizen as the academic student. And we know that being a citizen sometimes is more important, even though I did not say that. We are about academics. Graduation plan, individualized graduation plan. Upon admission, each student has a graduation plan designed that fits their goals, their needs, their wants, their dreams. And so even though you have 15 students, I did not get all of that. Internships, but I didn't get past that. Gary, can you get that back? Okay.
Just right here. See how you feel? Oh, there it is.
Okay, could
I was
be.
just missing it.
Okay, highlighted so that we could borrow.
You can go up and down.
Okay. So that we could borrow from them. Absolutely. In the regional, so the question is there a way that programs that do internship could be highlighted so that we could borrow from them? I'm mainly interested in their forms, syllabi, etc. Internships and mentorship law rolled out 2 legislative sessions ago, and an updated law and some rules were put in place. And so when we went across the state for the last 2 weeks in regional meetings, I have requested that some of those forms be sent in. We had found out that it's junior achievement. Yes. Junior achievement has a curriculum that helps with internships, and it has a $1 million liability policy attached to it. I'm not quite sure what the cost to that curriculum is. But as I get those forms, I will put them up on our web page because you are not the only one asking for those. And I have some programs that are utilizing that, like Guthrie Favor Academy. She started doing internships with her kiddos last year, and she started by baby stepping them into the Chamber of Commerce, and they would attend the weekly Chamber of Commerce breakfast every Wednesday morning. And she only took like three to 5 kiddos, and so she baby stepped them to, again, get them comfortable, get them ready to be in there. And then second semester, they were at the fire department and at the library and at a vet office and at a one of those 24-hour access places. And so be looking on the web page. A warning to the Alt Ed program webpage is that most times it takes you to the alternative certification page. So you need to type out all 3 words, and I believe it still takes you to the search page where you have to scroll down into the A's, and then there we are. But it is, can work study? I don't believe so. I believe that's 2 separate syllabuses. But I do have a few programs, like I had one student in a program that worked at Sonic, and so then he shadowed the manager because that was something that he was interested in. He was wanting to own his own fast food chains, and so they kind of merged both of those. And so he was already there, and so they just had him do some extra above and beyond shadowing while he was at his Sonic job. Okay. Graduation plan. Teachers are engaged. I don't really know what I said. And if they're showing adequate progress, so they should know when we walk in exactly how many credits they have, what their schedule looks like. If your semesters are 4-week, 6-week, 9-week semesters, they should kind of know and be meeting with you at those semester breaks to update, because A lot of friends are really booking it, and they're doing above and beyond in each of those semesters, and some friends not so much. They might have missed a class or two, and you have to readjust that graduation plan. So continuous conversation between you guys and the students about their graduation plan, but they should absolutely be able to tell us when we walk in where they're at, why they're at there at that point in time, what's next for them. Individualized instruction, it's differentiated based on a variety of methods based on student need and level. Students are actively engaged and making adequate progress. We aren't able to sit in front of a computer for 4 hours and 15 minutes. So our children that are struggling definitely don't have that kind of time span, and so make sure that you are providing them with some interaction and some cooperative learning, as well as the online soft curriculum. It's also a good way to break their day up with the counseling and the life skills and the art if you're bringing in an artist in resident. That way that they're not sitting and all the blood's gone to their behind instead of to their brain. Okay. Any questions about individualized instruction? Effective instruction, they are, it's appropriate rigor. It matches the needs of the student, and so that you are pre and post testing. If you're utilizing an online program, you're removing those sections based on the policy you've established, because why should I have to relearn something I've already shown you I've learned? It does speed it along. It does help motivate them. So make sure that you're adequately adjusting that individualized and effective instruction so that they're making progress towards graduation. Also, effective instruction. If I've got 15 students in my alt ed, my sole source is online curriculum to get their coursework, and you've only got 5 computers, or your Wi-Fi isn't working, you need to be adjusting your program. Questions there? Okay. Counseling and social services. This does not have to be an outside entity. I know that a majority of alt ed has an outside entity that comes in, but this needs to be 3-pronged. You need to be providing that academic advisement because we are a school trying to get them graduated. But we need to be making the shift from graduation as an endpoint and helping them make that transition to next steps. We know the closer that these students get to graduation, the more their old behaviors start to come out. They're getting scared. They don't really understand what the process is. They don't know what they're going to do on day 1 after you. And so we need to be thinking long-term next steps and not graduation as the end goal. So that's your academic advising. You need to be focused on their career, what those next steps are. That is a part of their ICAP plan, which again is rolling out. Some of you may even already be pilot in the pilot program this year. And then the last one are the emotional and social needs. Over the last 2 weeks, they've told us that programs are seeing more social emotional, more depression, more anxiety coming into their alt ed programs, and that you're becoming more of a emotional and mental health group of students. And so we need to be prepared for that. So a school counselor can work on those if that school counselor is comfortable working with emotional and social needs. But you also may want an outside entity coming in to work with those. That can be individual, that can be group, that can be guidance type classes, lessons. The internet has tons of counseling interest inventories to kind of build based on the students you have. Some programs pay for their counseling social service because a lot of your kids have senior care, Medicare, Medicaid, and so they're able to bill for those students, and you just fill out a contract that says, I'll allow you to bill for the students that can be billed, but I need you to work with my whole group. in certain ways. But that's going to go back to local decision on whether you guys are comfortable with an outside agency coming in and billing students during school time. So that's a conversation you need to have locally. But that is a way that districts and programs are getting counseling paid for. Social emotional needs, and then you have appropriate policies and pathways to getting students' needs met if they are beyond the programs and school district's control. So have good suicide prevention, bully prevention, those preventions and policies need to be in place. Title IX needs to be clearly defined for these children as well. Any questions? Okay. Life skills instruction. When we go out, a lot of times you'll see that the counseling and the life skills has been merged because a lot of times they're the same skills, anger management, conflict resolution. Those are both a counseling skill as well as a life skill. I also have programs that will do budgeting and personal financial literacy as a life skill, and every student has to have that. On the other side, cooking and budgeting. If I go to the grocery store and I only have $20 and I've got to eat, what's that look like? I have one program that he does dorm living, and every Friday morning they'll make something based on what a dorm college student's budget looks like. So how you beef up some ramen noodles, how do you do an Egg McMuffin from McDonald's but at home on a budget, those kinds of things. We also have some programs that have washing machines and dryers, because you've got those couch jumpers, you've got those different reasons why kids need to bring in laundry. Having a plan in place if they need to utilize the locker room for hygiene purposes, and have some of those kinds of things in place. But all of those can be a component of your life skills instruction. How do you do laundry? Didn't know that until high school, and so I'm teaching that to them. Any questions on life skills instruction? Wonderful. Okay, arts education. It's more than just putting them on Odysseyware, let's say, and giving them the art history class or the music history class. You really need to have it incorporated. There are the Bloom's balls, which are these three-dimensional balls. And so if you build some hands-on curriculum or projects and have them go through Bloom's taxonomy in any class, history, English, but it's a way that you're incorporating art. There are tons of different ways to incorporate art into like geometry or those kinds of concepts. Artists in residence are a great way to bring them in. Jennifer Allen Barron is the Director of Education at the Oklahoma Arts Council. So if you are considered a small rural district, and there may be a few other education avenues, but they have some grants for educators if you're wanting an artist in residence to come in. And you don't necessarily have to have that artist in mind. She can help you find artists that would meet your needs. All of those artists have already had background checks done, and they've had some pretty extensive training in the academic standards needed. And so you can transcript then after that. So her name is Jennifer Allen Barron with the Oklahoma Arts Council, and someone also said that Allied Arts is another organization that can help. And so I believe that they're, through the Oklahoma Arts Council, they'll also give passes to the Capitol to go through the Art Museum, and someone has also told me that the Oklahoma Museum of Art in downtown Oklahoma City also has scholarships. So if you want to come even do a field trip to the museum, that's another avenue. Okay, so the arts person is Jennifer Allen Barron. Okay. So there's lots of different ways to incorporate art. Of course, you can also have a hybrid program where kiddos come to you in your all-dead setting, but then go back to the traditional setting. We transported a student in the middle of the day for AP art because she was huge art, and so we want to be making those opportunities available. And it was only in the middle of the day, so of course you suburbaned her to and from the traditional school to get her those classes. Any questions about art? Wonderful. Okay. And then self-evaluation. As I said, we are wanting to have this process be more of a self-evaluation based on your district and your program goals and objectives. And this rubric has been tweaked and updated over the last few decades to be really strong in making sure that your students are successful. And so we want this rubric to be filled out before you get there. And we'll have a copy of the rubric as well to be able to make notes based on what you're showing us to prove you're where you need to be. And we may have some discussion about where we think you are and where you think you are. But this is a great way to start evaluating and a good model to our students on how to self-evaluate their goals and objectives. Any questions about the rubric? Okay. So I just click the red box, go up here. Okay, so this is the Alternative Education Program site visit. This is another form that we would like for you to have filled out. Oh, we got a question. How do I? Okay. The question is, if the expectation is that alternative education is different than traditional education, does that include district assessment schedules, gifted programs? No, sometimes those are multiple hat individuals that are doing those things as well, so you need to work together. And if they're going to give the ACT on this date, then we need to make sure that our little friends are there to take the ACT on that date. Gifted programs, again, some are pull-out, some are once a week, some are incorporated within the classroom, so we need to make sure that our students are getting those opportunities if they, and sometimes it's just a matter of scheduling, especially in smaller districts. And for an alternative education program exempted from some of the requirements like ELL. No, those are federal program, federal regulations that then get established at the state level with rules and regulations. So we are not exempt from that. We need to be supporting those kiddos. There isn't a due date on the self-evaluation rubric. It will just be when we call to set up to come meet with you throughout the year, that is when that due date will be. So whenever our visit is, you'll have to have that. So for some of you, that will be first semester. Others of you, that will be second semester, because there's 2 of us and 280 of you. We'll try our very best. Is art required of all students, or is that the opportunity to take? It's required of all students. In alternative education, they need to have art education. We know that it's as much as it's a graduation requirement, just to have the one art history class or whatever. It's very therapeutic for our kids. And a lot of times our kids are very hands-on. They are very artistic. So Algebra 2 may be a struggle, but art not necessarily so much. I know that because when I was in a program, it was here close to, I always had kids that performed at the arts festival because they were very artistic. And so that's not, if they want to, it should be incorporated. Okay. So this program visit, it's the first data component. So you'll have just your basic information and how much funding you're going to have, sending schools if you're a co-op, but then basic equitability information down here. Are you feeding them? If you're not feeding them, why are you not feeding them? Because we need to be feeding them. If you're unsure, you're a night program and you're unsure how to get food at non-traditional times, you can talk to your food and nutrition person. They know how to do that because there is guidance on that, but I do have that guidance also in my office that I can send you. Transportation, just remember there's an equitability component to that. Once we transported one, we transport all. That includes our alt ed students. Two gray areas are if your program is a career tech program, and then that goes down to contracting and decision between district and career tech, and then if it's a night program. But those are the only two gray areas. Everybody else needs to be figuring out how to provide transportation. We have no leg to stand on when mom calls about Johnny getting to and from alt ed. And then just some basic data. How many kids do you have? How many are seniors? How many do you expect to graduate? How many do you expect that aren't seniors but are still going to graduate? How many on an IEP? Pregnant parenting, career tech, concurrent enrollment, employed or work study, service learning, those kinds of things. How many of you had dropout to date? So that is rubric in this form you have filled out when we come to visit, or shortly after, if for one reason or another, you can email or fax those to us. But really kind of think these two forms when they come to see us. Any questions about the data that you're going to give us when we come? Okay. This is the student interview prep questions. We know that you have had time and you know your students and they're comfortable with you. We were even in a program last week where the student that we interviewed told us that of home and work and school, she feels the most safe at school. And that just is, it shows a lot to the people in that program and how they've been able to do that, but can't even imagine then what home life looks like, that she feels more safe at school than she does even at home. And so we want to see and talk to anywhere between 1 and 5 students, depending on the size of your program. If you've got 15 kiddos, pick 1 or 2. If you've got 400 kiddos in your program, I'm wanting 3 to 5. And so you kind of be the judge, but this questionnaire, just have them kind of fill it out. We want them to kind of know what we're going to ask. We don't want it to be a surprise, because we know that some of these children have very difficult histories and they don't do well with stranger danger, and we will be strangers coming in. But then they also need to be aware that I don't need specifics, and Missy doesn't need specifics if they don't want to share those. And so we just kind of want to prep them for the types of questions, really looking at how come alt ed works for them when the traditional didn't. So kind of want to talk about career plans, opportunities if they could change one thing in the world, those kinds of things. Just some prep questions. Questions on the student prep? Okay. Then the last one will be end of year data in the evaluation process. So you'll give us that form when we come visit. Same types of questions then will be sent to you in either like a SurveyMonkey or a Google Doc link. And I'm giving them to you now so you know what we're asking for come May. Typically, email goes out about May 1st. Due date is before you leave for the summer. I still have about 7 stragglers that still need to get it into me. So if you're one of those, let's do that already from last school year. So again, basic program information, co-op districts if you've got some districts. How many students did you serve? How many of them were in 6 through 8? How many of them were 9 through 12? How many of them were just credit recovery only? So again, it goes back to those different hats you wear. You may be ISS, you may be Alt Ed, you may be the credit recovery person. So if that kid is just coming into you for a class or two, but the majority of their classes are in the traditional school, they're credit recovery. However, if they're only coming to you for a course or two and then they're going to work, but they're also getting the life skills and the counseling, and your district has defined them Alt Ed, so that's where your definition really needs to be clear cut. Who is and who isn't, and what are the different types of programs we're offering. Number of students that went to career tech, concurrent enrollment, internship, work study, service learning. How many students did you have that were re-engaged? So they've dropped out. They've decided they want to come back. You've gone out and you've recruited those friends that have dropped out and they're coming back. How many of those kids are you are coming back to you? Again, we know that those kids may be 19, 20, 21. We free and appropriate education through your 21st birthday. And so we need to make sure that we're not putting up barriers indirectly or directly to keep those kiddos from getting a high school diploma. Students with 10 or more absences, students that were suspended out of school, how many were classified as seniors, seniors who graduated, other students who graduated, students who passed the GED, non-seniors who passed the GED, not just they said, I'm out, I'm going to go get my GED or my high step or whatever, but that you actually can prove they've passed. Number of students then who left to get a GED, number of students who left Alt Ed because they left the school district. How many of those friends signed the homeschool form? How many dropped out but you don't have a clue what's happened to them? They've returned to the traditional site, so say they want to go back to the traditional setting and you guys have established a plan to transition them back. How many of those friends went back to the traditional setting? I need to reestablish those because if there's 2 questions between. How many students left before 3 weeks? Research shows that it takes you about 3 weeks to really get someone transitioned into your program and to be able to start establishing that individual graduation plan and to build that rapport, that relationship with them. I'll put that in its appropriate place. How many were suspended or expelled? How many were on track to graduate in 4 years? And then the next question, how many were on track to graduate in 5 years, in 6 years, and then in 7 years? We know that the new A through F report card will go out 6 years, but 7 years will take us through their 21st birthday. So how many of those friends did you get by 21 or through 21? And then anything else that you want us to know about your program. We know that each group of kids is very diverse. And so anything else that you want us to know. So that is all I have for you. What questions do we have? That's a ton of information. We're here to answer questions at any time. Okay, then we will go ahead and sign off. Thank you for coming.